Rory Foster here with Mary Kate.
Hola.
All right. So we are talking about talleres, and these workshops that we do with local organizations are some of the most rewarding moments that you'll have on your immersion program. As you look into people's eyes and you're talking with them and you get the sense that they're learning something new, something that helps them to live a more healthy life for both them and their family members, it really is a rewarding thing. But at the same time, you might be feeling like super nervy about it because you got to be in front of people using Spanish, and you're like, where's this Xanax? I'm having a panic attack. And so Mary Kate and I are just talking through some of the logistics of it to give you a sense, to help you prepare, and to give you some ideas of some examples. So Mary Kate, you're a little newer to this, and so you probably have a ton of questions too. How about you just kind of guide us through this with some questions to help orientation, and we'll go from there.
Great. Sounds good, because I have plenty of questions.
Awesome. Okay, let's get started.
So when I'm getting there, what can I expect like this looks like? Is there a group of people I'm going to be talking to? Do I have access to digital resources? What does it look like walking in?
Yeah, so first of all, walking in, you will have met these folks before, because we always do an orientation day. So you have a chance to interact with them and get to know them a little bit. And then, yeah, we typically will have a digital projector. And so we'll always have a computer or two around, and most groups that you work with. So very rarely does anyone work on their own with these workshop topics. We're always in small groups, and typically groups are putting together Google Slides, and because it's just really easy to have good quality imagery and to sort of follow the flow of a workshop / presentation using the Google Slides and the projector.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. How do I structure? So I know I need to make a Google Slides presentation. How do I know how to structure it, or what the main points should be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we will be providing the general topics, and then those will be divided into subtopics, and then you and your group members are working on the given subtopic. And the way that we organize these, usually as a step one, as you're thinking about how the flow of your taller, your workshop, you need to figure out what they know, what your audience knows, so that it's not way over their head or super low level and they already know it all, and it's just kind of a waste of time, right? And so we want to have a way built in with your presentation to kind of assess knowledge and warm people up. And that's number one. And then you'll sort of teach the essentials of whatever your topic is. And then finally, there could be some Q&A, maybe like some interactive, dynamic way to sort of assess people's knowledge, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the general flow.
Mm-hmm. During the Q&A, I'm worried about, that some people might be worried about their Spanish level. Is someone going to be there to help out if the question is too advanced for me to understand what's going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's our job. So we're there as leaders, we're there helping. And this stuff isn't happening simultaneously. Not all three groups are going, or however many groups in a given day are doing the workshop at the same time. We typically do these consecutively. And so all the attention is on one given group, and that allows for a lot of opportunities for language help, interpretation of audience questions, helping you make sure you got that subtlety right in the answer that you wanted to give, that kind of thing.
Okay, great. We have the plan and the layout of what it needs to be done. Do I need to plan this and do this before I step foot in Costa Rica, or are we going to have time to work on it when we get there?
We have some time. in both Costa Rica and Ecuador, wherever you're traveling to. We have some time built in to the schedule, but oftentimes it feels a little bit rushed. And so the more you can do to, at a very minimum, collect resources, search for information in both Spanish and English about your given topic, those are some easy things that you can do to be preparing and to be kind of thinking about, what's the essential information here? Because obviously you could go on for hours talking about most of these topics that we do, because you know so much and there's so much great information to share. But we really want to sort of condense it down to the most actionable, the most important, and the most really layperson kind of information to be sharing. So yes, there's time in country, but also it does make sense to do some pre-trip research and resource gathering.
Okay, great. Do you have any tips on where to find resources or any links that would be useful for someone to start their research?
Yes, absolutely. We have put together a Google Doc with it's called Patient Education Resources for immersion participants, and we'll be sharing that link here down below the video. It's a full Google Doc with some essential outline stages of a workshop and things like that, and some links to examples. I do want to share some examples. Before I do, it's also important to remember a couple of, I guess, characteristics or assumptions that we can or can't make about our target audiences as we're putting together these workshops. One assumption is that we can't necessarily assume that our target audience are strong readers. And so what that means is, we don't really know the level of education that every individual has. And so we want to make sure that pretty much everything we do is more image or activity focused than it is text focused. So one of the more, least effective things we could do is probably put up a slide full of 100 words and, small font and have everyone read through it. That's going to connect less than a few choice images that you can then explain with some very brief bullet points, that kind of thing. That'll hit home better. Mm-hmm. The next thing is that when we think about talking to these folks and getting into that process of assessing what they know before we get started, that kind of thing, as you're asking questions of your audience, these audience members may not be great friends. There might not be a lot of trust or confianza, so to speak, within the group. And so if you're asking really open-ended questions, it might take someone very courageous to actually speak up. And so, if our bar is someone super courageous, we're going to want to lower that to get more interaction, right? And so some ways that we can get group interaction and group response without having anyone sort of singled out would be ways to find group response instead of individual response to things, giving A/B type questions where people can, raise their hand if it's this answer, or raise the other hand if it's the other answer, or, yes, no type questions, things like that allow people to sort of semi-anonymously or within a group give their answer, respond to a given prompt that you as a group give. And it's not too risky for anyone to really show up as having the wrong answer, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Like a true false situation, or maybe like a red or green card situation that they can hold up to show their opinion rather than having to voice something.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a couple examples. I'm going to share my screen so we can take a look at. Here's a slide from a couple of summers ago that was focused on breastfeeding and the benefits of breastfeeding. So let me share my screen and let's get this going. All right, so here we are. It's the Amamantare formula, so breastfeeding and formula. And so here's an initial kind of yes, no. Is it a bad idea to breastfeed my baby? Okay, it's kind of like a softball one, right? False, that's not a bad idea. Es buena idea. So here's a little explanation, right? Tiene muchas ventajas si puede hacerlo. So it has a lot of advantages if you're able to do it. Let's move on to the next one. Here's another one. So here's another one. Necesito amamantar a mi bebé por solamente 6 meses. So do I need to breastfeed my baby for only 6 months? Again, false. If it's possible, doctors recommend breastfeeding your baby for at least a year. There are benefits for both you and the baby. So going through some true, false stuff. Let's keep going. So there's more. There's like, here's a true one. Let's see. Es importante empezar a amamantar lo antes posible después del nacimiento. So is it important to begin breastfeeding as soon as possible after the baby is born? Verdad, true. So most moms begin breastfeeding when they're in the delivery room and they're still in the hospital, and this idea of the importance of skin to skin contact. So this is one of those group responses. And for this group, I think what they did was they had a little piece of butcher paper, or we used a whiteboard and put a line right down the middle. The left-hand column was sí, verdad, and the right-hand column was no or falso. And people brought their sticky notes up. They got out of the chairs, brought their sticky notes up, and put them in the column where they believed was the right answer. And that allowed everyone as a group to answer the question, but no one was really singled out because it was a little bit chaotic. Everyone up putting their stuff on the board, and then you could see all the Post-it notes, the sticky notes, and then the group was able to explain what the topic was. Okay, and then going through, so there was a long list of true, false kinds of activities, and then they went through and just began their presentation about the benefits of breastfeeding versus formula, and the no guilt sort of approach to, if you need formula, here's how you do it kind of thing. Let's take a look at another activity that we did in a winter program. And this one's about the importance of doing physical activity. This was in the context, this was one of the subtopics of diet and nutrition and physical activity, with the goal of helping to control diabetes and hypertension. Okay. And so here's some more true, false stuff. Here's the first question. True or false? Doing physical activity is good for you. Okay, total, easy one, right? Now, the way this is set up, it's not one of the things that the group did was they built in animations to the slide, and the animations allowed them to click advance or arrow right or whatever, and then new information popped up on the slide. And so they only saw this question first, and then they saw the answer when they clicked forward after they had a chance to talk through some things. Here's another one. True or false? It's necessary to go to the gym to do physical activity. This is one of those sort of stereotypical obstacles to doing exercise or physical activity, right? I don't have enough money for a gym membership. And so the idea that, no, you can do physical activity anywhere. And here's another one. True or false? It's necessary to do 2 hours of physical activity every day. False, talking about the 30-minute goal, that kind of thing. So you could see how using a Google slide is super helpful for adding high quality imagery to your presentation, your workshop, and allowing you to kind of progressively work through a topic.
Yeah, from a teaching perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense to, one, have people out of their chairs for a portion of the learning, so we're not just stuck in our chairs, getting antsy. And then Two, being really specific about, like you were saying, we can't assume that people can, one, understand what we're saying, or two, be able to read what we're saying. So really being specific on what images we're using. So in that past example, it was asking about, do you need to go to the gym? And there was a photo of someone at the gym. So not just including images to make your slide busy with a lot of pictures, but really taking the time to figure out, can I get my message across through only an image?
Yeah, good
And
point.
with those two different examples, the first group kind of used their true false questions to then, they had their question and then they made their point about what they were learning. Where the second group, it was like the warm up to be like, this is what we're gonna hit. We're gonna talk about how long you should go. We're gonna talk about where you can go work out. So having your idea of what are my end goals at the end of the lesson, and then planning backwards from there, that will be really helpful in trying to find a vision for what your presentation is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And on an additional note, kind of like that, it's important once we get in country, it'll be important for your group to check in with the other groups, because sometimes there's similar topics and you don't want to be overlapping too much, but really complementing. And so that's another thing. That's kind of impossible to do before we travel, but while we're in country, then the groups can begin to say, yeah, no, this is my lane. I need to stay in this lane. I'm not going to go into that lane over there. So awesome. Well, Mary Kate, what other questions might you have about these workshops?
How long is it going to be? How long do I need to plan my lesson for?
So, a good question. The typical length is right around 20 minutes, and you will be surprised at how fast that 20 minutes goes. If we stick to roughly 20 minutes, that will allow for a couple of groups to go, and that allows for transition time between groups. It allows for some Q&A. It allows for activities if we want to build in like a dynamic activity to your topic to illustrate the point, that kind of thing. So you should be shooting for around 20 minutes.
And how many people am I going to be roughly giving this taller to?
Yeah, that really depends on the location and the time of day and how effective the local organizations are at getting the word out. And sometimes they're scheduling things that make some days better days to attend than others. But in general, anywhere from like 10 to 20, sometimes like 30 would be a really big group.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Since we're making a Google slide, should I bring my laptop or an iPad? How should I work that out with my group?
It's a good idea to have some kind of tech that you can work with. Me personally, I'm always traveling with my laptop. I really don't do a good job working on a tablet. So the computer for me just makes sense. But if you are good with a tablet, awesome. That will be super helpful. If you're comfortable bringing a laptop, that would also be very helpful. But if you're not comfortable bringing something, that's okay too. Invariably, someone in your group will have one.
Okay. What if I'm sitting here watching this and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't even signed up for a taller. Where do I go to find that?
Yeah, good question. There's no time like the present to put your name down for a topic. And so if you navigate to the Welcome Hub of the immersion programs, you can find links to all these documents. It's another Google Doc that there's one for Ecuador and there's one for Costa Rica. And so head over to that Google Doc and you'll see a very detailed description of the projects in those communities. And you'll see where other people have been signing up as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have any more questions for this. I don't know if you have any final thoughts that maybe you haven't shared yet.
No, I think that's about it. I think that this gives a really good introduction to what we're doing and sort of helps define what the workshops can look like. And we have, again, the main goal for now is to begin gathering some resources about your topic, and then when we get in country, you'll have time to work with your partners on the actual specifics.
Sounds good.
All right, amigos. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Check below for important links for your program coming up, and we look forward to working with you abroad. Hasta pronto.
Hasta pronto.